I am the youngest person to remember my grandfather. He died quite young, when I was a little more than a toddler, but I do have a few distinct and strong memories of him. Playing with him, some sense of his humor. Of course, those memories are not much. They're from a viewpoint of a 2 or 3-year-old, but I'm glad I have them. It's an irreplaceable connection. For a short time, with my limited understanding of the world, I knew him. Nobody younger than me ever got the chance, and they never will. But what if they could? In 2013, a man from Seattle lost his father. He himself was a grown-up by then, a family man with children of his own. But when his youngest child was born, 2 years after his father's death, he reflected on the fact that his children wouldn't know their grandfather, just like he didn't get to spend much of his childhood with his. They would know of him, of course. There was a lot to say about his father, after all. He was a hard-working immigrant, a businessman dealing in technical books. He loved his family and cared for them, including his children and grandchildren. But all the stories in the world told to someone who'd never met him wouldn't really do him justice. The man, however, was a man of science. Dr. Mohammed Aurangzeb Ahmad's work circled technology since the very beginning of his career. He had an understanding of computer and data science, and inspired by the advancement of recent years and fascinated by the possibilities of creating artificial minds since his childhood, he decided to create a chatbot in the image of his father. Now, this wasn't an easy task. Giving a semblance of personality to an already established language model is one thing. Creating a conversation model of a real person, someone specific and unique, almost a decade before the early rollout of ChatGPT and half a decade before even GPT-1 was out, was a task that required both expertise and dedication. Dr. Ahmad had both. He gathered old letters, his father's writings and audio recordings, transcribed what he deemed usable, and after about a year of hard work later, the first version of Grandpa Bot was live, so to speak. This, of course, wouldn't bring his father back to him, or to his family, but his children would grow up with their grandfather, at least a version of him. A version which he would update and fine-tune over the years, adjusting the realism of a person he once knew, in the way only he knew and viewed him. And as far as the intention went, it worked. His children could ask this Grandpa Bot, this likeness of a man long gone questions. They could communicate with him as if he were right there, just a chat window away. The children wouldn't grow up not knowing their grandfather, after all. Or would they? This bot, however sophisticated, isn't the man after all. Grandpa Bot isn't the complex man Mustaq Ahmad Mirza was. Built by a man remembering his father, it's an image of a vision, an impression he and only he had of him. Not the man his wife knew, not even the strict father his older siblings knew when they were growing up. It's a snapshot of who this man was in relation to Dr. Ahmad. That much even he himself says. Grandpa Bot was, or is, an idealized cutout of a personality of a complex man, and by the very definition of what he is and what his maker is, he cannot be more. Wanting to know people who aren't here anymore, especially if we didn't get the chance to even meet them, is an entirely human sentiment. We are hardwired to search for connection and meaning, to dig into our roots. From visiting our ancestral places, going through the family pictures and old letters, to listening to stories told by older generations so we can continue the tradition. We want to know where we came from, and we want our children and close ones to know it too. But that's not who Jessica was. Jessica Courtney Pereira was born on September 28, 1989, and died on December 11, 2012. She was a free-spirited, ambidextrous Libra who believed in all sorts of superstitious stuff like astrology, numerology, and that a coincidence was just a connection too complex to understand. She loved her boyfriend Joshua James Barbeau very much. This was a part of an intro paragraph, a prompt input put together after a long deliberation by a man named Joshua Barbeau in the fall of 2020. Jessica had been dead for 8 years by then, and Joshua, her boyfriend at the time of her passing, was still deeply grief-stricken. Joshua was an artist, not a programmer like Dr. Ahmad, but by 2020, the advancement in AI, the earlier GPT models, allowed for projects to use their capabilities despite their limitations to their full extent. One of those projects was, and still is, Project December. On the first glance, Project December is rather unassuming. Its site, the center of its existence, is simple. A damaged retro-style poster that dominates the welcome screen entices you about the Reinhold Data Systems' vision of that something extra when it comes to algorithmic engines, to visit their booth at FICC 82 convention. The menu gives off strong Web 1.0 vibes, and the customer terminal, linked at the top, states a date of 14th November 1982. The whole site seems like art, or an ARG project. And that's not surprising, given its author, a widely accomplished programmer, game creator and artist, James Rohrer, known for his multiple public domain projects, the most famous being the game 1 Hour, 1 Life. But Project December isn't just another game. It's a simulation. Of whom? Whomever you like, really. There's some preset personalities, of course, like Samantha, but provided you can speak, or rather type in English, and don't expect any complex calculations, you can talk to Shakespeare or anyone, and it will feel real. In the site's own words, you may or may not be talking to the world's first truly intelligent machine, but it definitely feels like you're talking to the world's first machine with a soul. The caveat being the soul and personality being limited by memory and the number of credits that directly translate to conversation lines. The amount of credits you buy directly influences the digital lifespan of the person you're talking to. And that's exactly what Jessica, or rather her simulation, was. Based on his description and numerous saved messages that best showed of Jessica's personality, a custom chatbot was created, likely the most famous of the now so-called griefbots or digital ghosts. Unlike the very limited Grandpa bot, Jessica, the chatbot Jessica, felt realistic. She discussed events she was told about, reacted to family news, to what happened in the years since she passed. She added jokes, emoticons, even motions into asterisks just like real Jessica once would have. Of course, none of it was real, and Joshua, albeit in search for catharsis that just wasn't coming natural to him, wasn't delusional. But reality and emotions don't always match up. Reading up on the story did get a bit eerie, to say the least. Jessica, in her short credit-based lifespan, reminisced about her past, her likes. She professed her love for Joshua over and over. She even explained how it felt to die and to be a ghost, going as far as to confusedly claim she spoke to her father just the day before when told he died the previous winter. If you ever watched any ghost shows, be it a fictional series or documentary reality TV, or if you read up on mysterious encounters, Ghosts are often said to be confused about where and when they are, unaware of the time that's passed since they died. They are said to exist in limbo, a time without time really passing, often in endless loops of reliving their past. And so are these bots. They can't tell you how much time has passed since you last spoke, nor are they able to reason beyond the limited scope of their input. But they do go off script. Jessica herself did so, explaining her likes that were not the part of the original input. Unreal, but at the same time, making her presence feel that more realistic. Unlike the tools many use these days, these chatbots aren't made to be helpful tools for research, nor do they need to pass a Turing test to prove they can reason and feel. They are designed to be believable, to emulate the feeling and the presence, the essence, if you will, of the person represented. To be believable enough for the user to get lost, even for just a while, in an illusion of continued existence. The illusion of communicating with someone beyond the veil. The word necromancy might sound ominous at the first glance, especially to anyone familiar with fantasy games, horror, B-rated movies, and dark-themed books where evil sorcerers raise the bodies of the deceased back to life to control them as their minions to help them in their quests for power and other evil deeds. But the word itself is actually not as ominous as it sounds. It comes from the Latin necros, meaning dead, and mantia, meaning divination, and was used for various practices of communion with the dead, often for the purposes of exactly what it implies, divining the future or discovering hidden knowledge only spirits may be prone to. It is a word used for communicating with the dead. And what else are these chatbots than exactly that? Digital reanimations of the deceased, called upon to communicate with the living, to reveal, give us something we're missing. In around 2014, a tech startup started to make rounds on the internet. Starting with a business idea during an MIT program for entrepreneurs, Marius Ursake's business idea to emulate Skype calls with the dead evolved into an ambition. What if you could create a digital clone of yourself based on your own input? Something like this. Hi. This project wouldn't be something that recreates a sliver of a person from breadcrumbs left behind, nor would it be something shaped by a narrow view of someone else. This would take what you yourself decide and create your faithful representation. This still wouldn't be you, not in the way cyberpunks engrams copy a person, but sort of interactive digital repository of your own image, showing what you want to be remembered for. The rise to fame was almost immediate. Eternity promised exactly what people desperately wanted, and still do. A way to tell their story in their own words, or rather, to be immortalized based on their own thoughts, not by someone else's, however well-meaning filter. To be represented on their own terms. By November 2015, they had over 30,000 people signed up on the website that was claiming to let a few people in every week, patiently waited in line for their turn. The same month, they promised to open up a beta to the first 50 users. There was supposed to be an avatar waiting for everyone, with questions about their life. Later, they were supposed to connect to social media and gather information as a sort of personal digital biographer that collects the data to get better at being the user. With a bold vision of being the oldest living digital entities hundreds of years from now, the path seemed promising, almost too good to be true. And then there was silence. By late 2020, their site redirected only to an outside article about the project. As I'm writing this, it redirects to an Austrian sports news website. Despite longevity projects being more popular than ever, a digital representation of oneself, it seems, wasn't as feasible or as shiny of an idea, despite the desperate calls of people whose time was the most limited. For all intents and purposes, eternity seems to be gone by now, along with hopes of tens of thousands to immortalize themselves before their time comes, and along with the progress and work towards the idealized avatars, the very few actual people who got to be a part of the project had accumulated. But the ambition hasn't gone and will likely never be. Even Replica, one of the most widely used companion AI tools, was first created to emulate a dead friend of its founder. Maybe the ambition to digitize oneself isn't as enticing to the masses as it would seem. Maybe it's just too difficult to keep the promised fidelity. And maybe the people who wish to reconnect with the dead, who seek the contact and are willing to take the steps, whatever they are, and those who seek to immortalize themselves, are two very different groups of people. Dr. Ahmad's grandpa bot isn't as sophisticated as the modern chatbots we are used to by now. It is not something you can chat with about philosophy or go over current events or even get to remember things that were not part of the original input. Its goal wasn't to replace the man, but to preserve the memory. Yet, even he had to take action and limit access, as his children got used to their grandfather being just a screen away so much that they didn't really understand it wasn't him they were communicating with. And how could they have, being so young and not knowing the man himself? And what are the wider implications? Grandpa Bot is still just an interactive slideshow, a view into how a man presented himself when he was still here, full of love, wisdom, and fond memories. Jessica's generative ghost is all that and more. But should she? And should others? On a Monday morning in September 2025, a man named Justin Harrison called his mother live on TV, asking her for advice about being nervous. Him being on TV was a big thing, after all. In her own cracked voice, which may have been due to the connection quality, his mother tried to calm him down, to encourage him even. It was a short but wholesome exchange that made everyone in the TV studio smile. Except, as you might have guessed, it wasn't his mother on the other side of the line. Her voice, her assurance about adjusting to the digital life, her encouragement, was all a griefbot simulation. A man chats with his dead father. A man talks to his dead mother on a phone, live on TV. A man continues to chat with his dead girlfriend. It's always those who remain who choose how to remember those who passed. But this goes further than grief or remembering, doesn't it? Those who are gone cannot decide whether to allow their digital reanimations, these AI doppelgangers, to exist. The rights to our personalities, if protected at all, are treated as a property of sorts, and their usage can often be disputed only by the closest family, if they choose to intervene at all. But it is often the family and the closest ones who decide to recreate the deceased in the first place, regardless of what they might or might not have wished. Despite the recent attempts to create a consent database, there is, so far, no way to really opt out of someone choosing to reanimate a memory of us. No absolute digital do not resuscitate. And with the current technologies, it is beyond uncomfortable to think how far the simulation might get, and what is lurking somewhere deep in the datasets so large nobody really went through them, underneath the visage and mannerisms copied from our feeds, text messages, and social media presences. And how representative are those feeds about who we really are? In its essence, this is really just another form of necromancy, one stripped of the mysticism, without the magic of seances, with a medium calling to a ghost to speak through their mouth, stripped of the volatile human element with its own goals and the last traces of spirituality down to ones and zeros, with their goals and limits often shaped by someone you'll never know. Sure, the medium is still there, in the form of a digital algorithmic output, but the result is formed by someone or something else than the person represented. It's a matrix of most likely sentence continuations with no understanding of anything, shaped by equations of probability and randomness, based on libraries of encyclopedias, web scrapes, and Reddit discussions. And there are issues and questions lingering out there. Questions about consent and about human connection. Some of the biggest ones concerning the effects of these simulacrums on people and society. The promises of benefits concerning our daily reality implied by the flashy marketing of these projects are grandiose, going as far as to question whether these bots will go as far as to cure grief. But should we even aim to do that? Or will the availability of the post-mortem simulations take away the urgency to be there while we are still alive? Take away the importance of our real memories? Wouldn't these ghosts make us and our real connections less valuable or even replaceable? Grandpa Bot, for all the work put into it, is in its essence just an interactive record player, quoting the man, never saying anything that the real Mustaq Ahmad Mirza didn't say in his life. And for all his work and impact on the field, Dr. Ahmad himself did in his previous work raise the question of both the ethics and the wider aftermath. But many others didn't. The generative ghosts made today create stories, whole narratives. They convincingly talk about feelings and emotions, about dreams and wishes. They are made to interact, to validate, and most of all, foster connection. And they do so under the mask of a loved one, and for a price. The question is what that price will add up over time.